In this video, I'm going to show you how to make concrete countertops for your kitchen or your garage workshop, and this is a DIY step-by-step guide. And if you're new to this channel, my name's Josh. This channel is all about DIY to save a ton of money. So be sure to subscribe, ring that bell so you get notification every time I release a new video, and hammer that like button for me. That's all I ask in return for making this video. So we got a lot to go over today, so let's get started. This is what's called cement board. It's a 1/2 inch thick. This is a great base for concrete countertops because it is also water resistant and it also bonds well to it. So I'm going to go ahead and mark everywhere on this sheet that I need to cut in order to install it onto my framing. And also I'm going to rip down the beveled edge here first before making my cut because I want to make sure it's an exact 1/2 inch like the rest of the sheet. Before cutting the cement board, I need to get the measurements for the sink opening. And I already know the total length is 5 foot, which is a full sheet. So my width, like I already know, is about 27 inches. So with that being said, I need to get the measurement for the sink off each edge as well. Be sure to stay till the end to see how to frame up for the concrete countertops, but if you'd like to watch that first, be sure to check out the timestamps below and jump to that section of video and watch it first. Here I am transcribing the measurements from the framing to the cement board for the cutout. I'm going to use a circular saw with a diamond blade on, and I'm going to cut this, and I'm also going to make sure that I have my oscillating tool on hand with a diamond tipped oscillating bit as well so I can cut out this sink. And make sure that you wear a respirator, eye protection, and ear protection, because one, it's really loud, so you need ear protection, but the most important part is a respirator because you do not want to breathe in the dust of this cement board. So I'm going to put on my PPE and cut this board. Before securing the cement board to the framing, I'm going to cut out a hole right in the center of the sink where I want the faucet, and I'm going to place it right in between what's left in the back here. And something really important to note, you need to use a 2 5/8 inch hole saw. I got this stopper from Concrete Countertop Solutions, and this actually is going to be placed up under it, and it's going to give me the perfect elevation from a concrete countertop. Then after the concrete sets up, we just knock this out. Then our hole is in the concrete countertop really easy. I got my old one here from the last project, so I'm just going to reuse this. It's still in good shape. So I'm going to cut the hole out outside real quick because I don't want this dust on the inside. I had the cement board cut. It all looks really good. I have two options when it comes to securing it to the framing. I could use silicone and just place silicone down. Then after it sets up, it's kind of glued down to the framing. That's how granite and quartz countertops installed in any solid surface. So it's the same idea. So if you want this permanent, what you would want to do is place screws, the backer bore screws, to hold it down. But just in case if I want to cut this silicone and then lift this top off and remove it later, I can. So I'm just going to place silicone down to secure the cement board. Now, to all honesty, it really doesn't take much silicone to keep this tacked down. All right, that looks good. I'm going to let that set up and resume after lunch. It's now time to form up for the concrete countertop. There are two very good options for forming up the concrete countertop. One, you could simply place wood around the edges and then put whatever you want as an overhang. Let's say you want a 1 inch overhang, you'd put 1 inch lumber here, and then you'd put a board up to whatever height you wanted your concrete, and then you'd form that up and you just pour the concrete in that way. But the option that I'm going to use is to use the Z counter forms by Concrete Countertop Solutions. Concrete Countertop Solutions sponsored a video back when I did my outdoor kitchen, and they supplied the forms for those concrete countertops, and I just happen to have some left over, and I would opt to buy these for a job because it makes it so easy to use them. So I wanted to disclose that just for pure transparency. To install this, it's very straightforward. I think you're going to like it. If you'd like to see how I use the Z counter forms when I built my outdoor kitchen, check out the video link top right hand corner of the screen, or the description below. This is why the Z counter form is so powerful. If you install it right to the edge, just like so, it automatically covers up the side of the cement board and it gives you an 1.5 inch overhang. And then after it sets up, we just snap off the edge. Very simple to do. So I'm going to cut all these to length and go around the corner at a 45. And then after we install those, we got the backs that's going to stand up at the right height to match the front. So then whenever we go to finish, we can screed right across that back, and it makes it so easy to do it this way. So I'm going to go ahead and cut everything to length now. In order to anchor the Z counter form to the cement board, I find it's important to line your 45-degree corners up so that way they're all lined up perfectly. And that looks really good there. So I'm going to anchor this section first. I'm going to be using a 5/32 drill bit, and I'm going to drill and place a number 10 screw about every foot across this piece. And you want to be careful not to drill through the cement board. I'm now going to place a screw here. And you want to snug these, don't over tighten them, it'll strip that cement board out really easy. I'm going to come down here and place another one. I'm now going to install the other side. I'm going to go ahead and pre-drill the holes. We'll install that right in that corner like so. I'm going to use Gorilla Tape and reinforce this corner to help it stay tight and increase the strength. Now finish placing the screws along this piece. Whenever I cut the piece for the back, I'm going to go until it stops right up against this form and then notch around this lip so it stops right here. And then I'll have to dam off this back and do the same to the other side. And the back installs just like the front. We just place screws across the back into this bottom lip. I'd like to point out how I did this corner. I stopped the form right here at the wall edge, so that way whenever this comes off, we don't see this profile at the end of the countertop, which right out here at the front, it was very important to me. And I reinforced this with tape to help finish this form. So once concrete goes in, that's going to create a nice pocket to hold it. And then I did the same to the other side. Before dropping in the sink, I'm going to install the concrete form around the top. Because this is a drop-in sink, this is really your best way of doing this. Concrete Countertop Solutions has this sink form that you can buy, and it has a sticky side that would stick right around the inside of this, and it works really well. And because I already made one for this exact sink, I'm going to repurpose this from my last video. This is just simply going to sit right down in here like so, and I'm going to place a board in here to hold it into place. And you always want to make sure you put your joint that you see here, because you're going to see a little bit of a line where this seam is, and this is going to be something you're going to want on the side of the sink that's going to be facing you. And the reason why that is because you won't see it that well in that case. So I'm going to set this into place like so. And if you need to see exactly how to form this, you can check out the video where I did this for my outdoor kitchen like I already mentioned earlier. I'm now going to drop my plywood in here that I cut out to keep all this in position. I'm going to place a shim right here at this joint to make it extra tight where this plywood is. I'm going to add some more shims here to make it tight. Using the 100% silicone that we used earlier, I'm going to put a hardy bead around the outside of this, and also just a little bead on the inside as well, since I'm trying to use this plywood to make it extra secure. And this bead will be part of the exposed edge after we take this off, so I'm going to smooth this out really even and nice. Before dropping the sink into the opening, I'm going to put a liberal amount of silicone around this edge. We're now going to drop the sink right into the opening. I'm going to work it into that silicone, get it pressed down really well. I'm going to double check to make sure I'm sitting exactly where I want it. I'm going to take my silicone and caulk anywhere where we have a potential for leaking, like back in this corner, this seam, back in each one of these corners. Anywhere where you think the concrete could seep through, make sure you place silicone there. It's now time to install the fiber mesh. This fiber mesh came with this system, and this just rolls out in the length of the countertop, and then we just cut it with tin snips or even household scissors. And this stuff is very sharp on the edges, so you want to make sure you wear gloves. So I'm going to roll this out the length and then cut it. And we want to make sure that we stay back from the edge just a little bit so this doesn't poke through over the edge of the countertop. I'm going to use these chairs to snap on the edge of the fiber mesh, and then if they get secured down to the cement board using the same screws that we were using earlier, just the number 10 pan heads. And then we're going to snap all these on and secure the front row, and then we'll lay it into place. The fiberglass mesh is now complete, and something really important whenever you're doing this, make sure you put enough chairs to where this is floating just below the surface. If we place a level from point to point, it's going to be perfectly flat and level, and this is just going to be right below the surface, and that's where you want it. That's going to give it the most strength. So now that that's complete, we're going to get to mixing up the concrete and getting ready to pour this top. I'm going to mask right around the drywall, so that way we don't get any splashing of the concrete up on it, and it'll protect it somewhat. And I'm also going to mask around the side of this so I don't get any concrete on our fresh wood and on the floor. So I'm going to do that now. If you'd like to purchase this hand masker, I'll put a link in the description below so you can pick it up for yourself. After mixing, the tools that I'll need for the finish is a screed tool to help level it from form to form, a magnesium hand float, and this is going to give us our first start to the finish. And then I got a steel trowel, and this is going to be the very last thing we do for the finish while it is setting up and curing. So these are the 3 finishing tools that you'll need on hand. Here are all the supplies that I'll be using to mix up my concrete for the concrete countertops. I got 60-pound bags of sand mix, and sand mix is great because it is a very smooth concrete mix, so there's no rocks or gravel or anything of that nature in it. And that's going to be important for this mix because we want all of the fluid to run under the screen and smooth out real nice. And then we got acrylic fibers. This is by Concrete Countertop Solutions, and this mixes one of these bags per bag of the 60-pound sand mix. And whenever we mix these acrylic fibers, we're going to go with 2 quarts of water, and then we're going to mix it up really well with our mixer in a 5-gallon bucket. And before we add the sand mix, we need to do that first. So then after the acrylic fibers are mixed with 2 quarts of water, we're going to mix in 60-pound bag of this with 2 more quarts of water, and then mix it all up really well. And then after it's mixed up really well, we add just 1 more quart of water, and then we'll mix it up again. So I have a 2-quart pitcher here. So we're going to do a pitcher per acrylic fiber, a pitcher per sand mix, and then a half pitcher to finish it off. So the reason why I'm explaining this before I mix it is because I'm indoors, so I want to put a respirator on when I mix this because I don't want to breathe in any of this. So I'm going to get this mixed up now. All right, I'm just going to pour it right into the form and then take my float and kind of push it around and level it out as I go. And I'm going to keep this mask on just again because I'm mixing this up in here. All right, I'm going to keep mixing and pouring until I get to the end. I'm at the point where I need to screed across the forms before I mix up the last bucket. Pretty sure I ought to mix up at least half a bucket. But all we have to do here with the screed tool is place it back here from form to form, and we just rock it back and forth like so. And this is what's going to give us our first level plane from form to form. So I'm going to screed across this, and any low spots, like in this back corner, I can already tell it's a little low. I need to put a little more back here like that. All right. And also, you may have seen me in the time lapse, be sure to tap these sides really well because you need to get the air bubbles out. So as we go, we're going to do this, and that's going to bring the water along the form and give us a better finish on the edges. As you can see, I got plenty in here like I suspected. I'm going to get my trowel to actually scoop some out. All right, I'm going to go back through. You can see I'm taking my time here because this is important for your first pass to get this pretty darn close. All right, we got to mix up about a half of a bucket full. To ensure that we got all the air pockets out of this edge, again, you don't want to leave an air pocket in here because you'll see it after we take the forms off. So just to save from any of these chips from flying up into the concrete, I'm going to wipe these off real quick with a paper towel to get them out of the way. And then once we got that off, we're just going to take a palm sander and we're just going to run it across this edge, and that's going to vibrate it really well to help draw any air pocket out of here. So you really want to make sure you do this because, again, it's pretty critical. And you can see it draw air bubbles up as we go. That's what you want. It's been about an hour since we first poured this top and about 30 minutes since I finished it. And now if you look across it, it looks like it's relatively wet. So we do not want to put our hand float in there yet because it'll just stick to your float when you try to finish it. So with that magnesium hand float, we want to make sure that it looks kind of dry at the top. You can see where it'll start setting up, but yet we don't want it really dry to where you can't run your float across it and float it. So there's a little fine line there, so we're going to have to let this set up for a while yet. We've been setting for about another hour, and this is set up much more. And if we place our thumb into the concrete, you'll see it leaves just a little bit of an imprint. That's how we know we are ready to go. If we placed our thumb in that and there was still concrete sticking to us, it's definitely way too early. I got what's called a magnesium hand float, and this is made out of magnesium, so whenever we run it across the top, it's going to draw water up to the surface, which is going to help smooth out any of these humps and bumps that you see, and it's going to help start our finish to where whenever we run our steel trowel across, it's going to be much smoother than what it is now. So in order to do this, all we have to do is place this on here, and we slowly just glide it right across like so. You'll see it's starting to pull the moisture right up to the surface. And then we'll get on the edges. And we want to angle this slightly to where it does not dig into the concrete. We want to make sure that we're going across smoothly. So I have a slight angle, so instead of holding it flat, I have it tilted up just a little bit. Again, tilt it up and then run it across. And I'm applying a fair amount of pressure here, not a ton. Just like that. You can see it's starting to smooth out. And you'll feel it's kind of like a creamy texture whenever you're doing this. Get all the edges. And you'll see it fill in all the air pockets as it runs across. And like anything else, the more you do it, the better you're going to get. So if it's your first time doing it, don't be too hard on yourself. Do the best you can. You can see it's getting nice and smooth. And the more you work it, the creamier you'll feel it get. This is going to turn out to be a nice top. I can see it already. We don't have to rush this. Take your time, do a good job. We got all day today. And that's really all there is to it. And now I got to do this across the rest of the top. After the first pass with the float, this is the end result. And you could also float this multiple times, but we're going to let this set up for another hour or two and then run the steel trowel. I'm back 2 hours from now, and this is definitely more dry than what it was. So we're going to take our steel trowel and try a spot here. This needs to be set up pretty good in order to run this across. So we're going to see what we got. Yeah, I think we're good. So whenever we do the steel trowel, it's important not to let it dig into the concrete because that's going to ruin the finish. We want to make sure that we tilt it up in the direction we're going, so that way we don't dig, and we want to go across nice and easy. And you can hear it on the concrete as it goes across. I'm just applying a moderate amount of pressure here. You can see it's smoothing it right out. Start on an edge, apply pressure, and just keep going over it like so. And you can see it's starting to smooth it out really well. And this is the technique that we're going to have to use to give it its finish. It's going to be the final one before we sand. So we need to take our time here, do a good job. So yeah, you get the idea. Now do that across the whole top. The steel troweling is now complete, and we're going to let this set up for 2 days before resuming. It's been 2 full days since I poured this top. I'm now ready to remove the forms around the edge and the sink. And the first thing I need to do is remove the tape from the corners, and then this is simply just going to peel back like you see here. So I'm going to start by removing this tape. In order to remove the form, we simply pull down and snap it off, and it's going to leave the other part of the form underneath of the countertop, and it's going to look really good. So we're going to pop this off now. All right, as you can see, that looks really good. Nice and smooth edge. And I must say, that turned out really awesome on this end. You can tell I vibrated it really well because we got literally a glass type finish here on the outside. I really like that. So I'm going to remove the rest of this. I now got to remove the silicone that we placed here as the seal. And as I mentioned, that's what gives us the transition from the sink to the concrete countertop. I have what's called a diamond sponge. And this is technically gem pad made by Concrete Countertop Solutions, but this just goes across the edge like you see, and it more or less will sand down any concrete we need to by hand on these edges. So I'm going to break all these edges so they're not so sharp, and that way they'll help extend the life of the concrete top on the edge, just so it doesn't chip as easy for one, and for two, it's a little safer not to have a super sharp edge here. So I'm going to get my respirator on and actually run my shop vac as I do this to help minimize the dust. Now that I'm done with the diamond sponge, I'm going to switch over to a palm sander. I have sandpaper on my palm sander that's actually specific for concrete and marble, that type of thing, because this is a solid surface. You can't use standard sandpaper for this. So after we go through with 120 grit, just get all the major imperfections out with the 120, then we're going to switch to the 220 grit to give it one more smooth sanding in order to finish this up. And believe it or not, this stuff sands relatively easy considering it's concrete. So we want to make sure that we do a good job here, because this will get all the major imperfections such as trowel marks, anything like that that you may not have got with your steel trowel out. This actually looks really good. I don't really see too much to sand out, but we're going to hit this real quick before moving on to the next step. I'm definitely going to put on my respirator, and I have my shop vac hooked to my palm sander, so as I'm sanding it should suck up majority of the dust. Since we're indoors, very important. Also, increase the ventilation in your room, open the windows, whatnot. You definitely don't want to breathe in this dust. This concrete countertop is looking really good. I still got to seal it, and I'm not going to stain this. I'm going to keep it natural concrete look just because it's in a workshop and I actually kind of like the looks of it naturally. So I'm going to go ahead and remove all this masking and install the faucet and then the drain. And I got to let this cure for several days before I can actually put sealer on it. So I'm going to go ahead and address everything else. In order to address the installation of the sink, faucet, and drain, I had to remove all the masking, and I wiped down the countertop and vacuum it. And I did remove the knockout for the sink faucet and installed the drain in the bottom of the sink. The drain was supplied with the sink. After I installed that, I installed the faucet where I removed the knockout, and I first had to install the water lines onto the faucet from the manufacturer. And it was very easy. I simply placed it down the hole, then installed the nut back onto the bottom of it to secure it. Then, in order to install the drain, I had to place an elbow over going towards the drain from the existing plumbing, and then hooked up the PVC trap. If you need a detailed video installing the trap and the 1/2-inch water lines, check out the video link in the description below, and I'll walk you step by step on the details of the installation. But as far as the water lines here, we just have 1/4 turn shutoff valves made by SharkBite right onto the water line. Then I tighten them up with a wrench for final connection. The sink and faucet is all hooked up now, and just some features about this. This pulls out and the weight pulls it back down, as you can see. And it also has the hot going out and then the cold when you turn back. Now, since we just hooked everything up, it's important to do a flood test. I had the sink stopped up, and we're going to fill it up about halfway full of water, inspect for leaks at the drain, and then when we let the water out, we're going to inspect for leaks on the rest of the drain lines, and inspect down below in general after you've been using it for a while, just to make sure that we don't have any leaks. So as of right now, we are looking good. If you'd like to check out this faucet and sink that I installed in this video, check out the links in the description below, and it'll take you right to the actual product that I used in this video. This top has been curing for about a week now, and I'm going to seal the top using what's called Tough Duck. And it's a concrete sealer designed specifically for concrete countertops, so it's safe to use for countertops. And something I did before I let this cure for a week is I took a damp rag and already wiped off all the dust and debris off the top of this. So we're already totally dry and clean, and we're ready to apply the sealer. Now that I have gloves and a microfiber cloth, I just have to open this up and then wipe it right onto the top in order to apply it. I have already shaken up the product really well. When we open it up, you'll see it's kind of a white foamy look. And I'm going to dip my cloth right into it. And then all we have to do is literally just wipe it onto the top. Not that complicated. You don't want to put this on thick because you don't want it to puddle or pool. We want to put it on nice and thin and let it absorb right into the concrete. And you could mask up along the wall if you're worried about it, but I'm just going to take my time and make sure I don't hit the wall. And it's really that easy to put on. And I'm literally just going to do this to the whole top. After applying one good coat of sealer to the concrete countertop, I waited 2 hours and applied another coat in order to give full protection using the sealer. After the concrete is sealed, as you can see, it is dramatically darker and it looks way better and more enriched. So sealing is definitely an important part of the process. After sealing the concrete, it's going to be usable in about 48 hours to where you can get water on it and whatnot, but it's not fully set up for 72 hours. So the full protection isn't there for 72 hours. The last step here is to just silicone right around the edge, so obviously water don't go behind the concrete countertop. I now have beautiful concrete countertops that will serve me for years to come. And if you need to see how to frame out for the sink and all the other framing, check out the rest of the video. It's going to help you immensely. Here's where I'm going to build the base framing for my concrete countertops. This is in a garage workshop, so I'm going to match the framing that I built in my last videos that I used for the wood tops, except this is going to be for the concrete countertops. And if you're installing a concrete countertop in a kitchen, you'd want to install base cabinets first, and I did a detailed video on how to do that. If you want to check the description below, I have a link to that video. So I first got to get the height in which I want to cut my post for my framing that's going to support the concrete countertop. So I'm going to key off the workbench I made in my last video to get the correct post height. Also, this is the plumbing stubbed out from the wall that you see me do in my garage build series. And this is going to be the drain and the water lines, and right here is where the sink's going to be. So let's get started. To get the height for the elevation, I got my Klein laser level and I'm going to elevate it until I get the laser right at the bottom of this countertop, because that's going to be the top of my framing, which is going to be the top of my post. As you can see, the laser level is casting a level line from the bottom of this countertop over to the wall, which is going to be the top of our post. And also, if you want to purchase any of the tools used in this video, check out the link in the description below. You'll find the links there and they'll help you out. I'm going to install a 4x4 post in each corner and then one in each the middle of the front and middle of the back. But the back, we have the drain right here in the middle, so I'm going to have to offset it to the left here. So that's what I'm going to do, is measure up to get the height to cut my post where each position is. So all we have to do is measure right off the floor to that level line, and we got 35.25 inch. Over here we have about the same, just a little light, and same thing, about 35.25 inch. So it looks like we can cut all of these 35.25. Because all the posts in the back are the same height at 35.25, I'm going to cut these three and build this back section first. Here are the posts I'm going to be cutting down. These are actually pressure treated posts. They don't have to be pressure treated, but I just happen to have 3 of them left over from a job, so I figured a good place to use them was out here in the garage workshop. So I'm going to measure up 35.25 and cut these with my miter saw. I now need to measure the length of our elevation where the concrete countertop is going to be installed. I'm just going to go tighten this corner right to the edge to where the step is. I got 80 inches. So I'm going to cut 2 2x4s an inch shorter, because since there's an inch overhang on our countertop, I don't want it going much farther past that wall. So I'm going to cut 2 2x4s 79 inches long. I have all 3 posts lined up here, and I'm going to line the bottoms up together like so. And then to keep these together, I'm going to place a clamp here so they don't shift on me. And place one up here. I'm now going to measure up 4.5 inches off the bottom of the post. And also measure up 8 inches heavy. And make a straight line from mark to mark. Using my circular saw, I have it adjusted down a little over 1.5 inches. And I'm going to cut at each line and then about 1/2 inch in between, so we can chisel out the section to allow for a 2x4 to pass through. If you take a look, a 2x4 will sit right in here really nice. And this is just a representation of the 79-inch board that's going to rest on this bottom post, which is going to add a significant amount of strength. Now we do the same to the top, except the only difference we do here is if this is the top, we just got to come down 3.5 inches to allow for a 2x4 to run flush with the top of the post. Here's the corner post that's going to go up against the steps. I need to notch out around the side to allow for the 2x4 to continue to wrap around so it joins the front of the framing. So in order to do that, it's the same idea. We just turn it sideways, then take 1.5 inches off at each measurement here that we put on here earlier. With the laser level on, I'm going to screw this 2x4 that we cut the length right on that laser level to where it is right at the top of the 2x4 like so. And now we need to make sure we hit a stud here. Because I did this cleat wall in one of my previous videos, I'll know exactly where the studs are. You can see they're marked on the wall from before. So I was going to screw right to each stud using a 3-inch screw, because we don't want too long because it could hit a wire. So we want to make sure we stay shallow so we don't hit a wire. I did have to cut that 79-inch board at the bottom in order to get it behind this pipe, but that's okay because the posts are going to go up against the wall and support it anyways, but I just wanted to point that out. Before setting my post in this corner, I'm going to place a cleat here against this set of steps, so that way it's already installed, so once the corner is on, we don't have to get back in here to secure it. And if you remember, I said we want to come 27 inches out. So I'm going to mark where 27 hits me out here. So realistically, if we run this to be about 1/2 inch past here, that's going to be about right for our cleat. I'm going to place the corner post here into place. All right, we're now going to double check that we're nice and plumb. That looks really good there. I'm now going to place 3.5 inch construction screws, 2 at the top and 2 at the bottom. For this one in the middle, because the exact middle is right here, we don't want to place it there because we can't. I want to place it as close to this hot water line as I can. Make sure we plumb that up. And that is perfectly plumb. Now that the back side's framed, we're going to begin on the front face. Like I already mentioned, I want the very face 27 inches. So I'm going to hook on the back of the post and come out 27 inches on each end, then mark on the floor where the center post is going to hit. Now with my laser level set back up, I'm going to get a measurement at each area where the post is going to set to cut the exact height. Because the concrete's not perfectly level, each post could theoretically be different. So I'm going to measure up and get my right height. 35 1/4, 35 1/2, 35 3/8. So as you just seen, all three of these fronts are different: 35 1/4, 35 1/2, and 35 3/8. So I got to cut all of them different. I have the 3 cut for the front. And a key difference here whenever we go to notch it out for the 2x4 is that we want to make sure we line our tops up together and key off that. You cannot key off the bottom because that's where the differences are, because it's going to be a little more jagged because of the difference of the floor. So we start here, cut our top, measure down to get our height up off the floor instead of measuring up off the floor. With the front, I can pre-assemble this before setting it on the floor. Very simple to do. I have the center in the center, the left one that we cut to the left, and the right one that we cut to the right. And here's one that we notched out the side. So I have the 2 79-inch 2x4s here. They're going to be placed, one in this front slot, and then the other one in this front top slot. So I'm going to begin putting these together. And something really important when we go to place these together is that we're going to place just one of these screws in to hold it temporarily. And these are the Fasten Master screws. These are actually structural screws, very good for this application. So we're going to install these with just one into place, and then we got to square it up. And I am going to pre-drill for these screws just because they're a pretty good diameter. I don't want to split this wood. And also I'm going to come up 1 inch from the top and 1 inch from the bottom right in the center of the post to secure these. With this center one, we're just going to find the exact center. And we're not going to sink these all the way in yet, just because we're going to connect boards on each end. I'm now going to take a framing square and square up the post just to make sure we're setting properly before placing in our second screw. Now we place our second screw. All right, we can now set this into place. All right, we're going to set this roughly where it goes. All right, that's roughly where it sets. I'm going to place 2 screws at this bottom cleat to hold it into place for now. I'm going to double check to make sure we got 27 inches across the front here from the back, and looks really good. I'm now going to cut blocks to finish the ends, and then I'm also going to place a cleat here against this wall and at the bottom, and then I'm going to address the center support as well. With the center support, we now drive these lag screws in through the post and into this board, and that's going to give us a strong connection. And it draws it all tight, and we're now going to make sure we're setting nice and square with the post. This side we're going to toe screw, but we want to make sure we are square. So right there is going to be square. I'm going to mark that with my pencil. And I'm now going to toe screw into this board and drive some more screws in it. And that's all there is to placing the middle support. And do the same to the lower shelf as well, except I got to take my speed square and make sure I get the same elevation from the top of this 2x4 to the board. I'm now going to finish driving the rest of the lag screws. Before doing any more framing up top, so we can get to the bottom easier, I'm going to place the 2x6 boards as the bottom shelf now. So I got to get a measurement for the length of them, and then we'll cut around the post to install them. 79 inches. To install the boards, I'm going to use an 1/8 inch drill bit with a countersink, and then just drive the decking screws into the 2x4 in the back and on the sides. And when we get to the center support, just put 2 on each end of the board. Now that I have the lower shelf boards installed, I'm going to frame out for the sink. This sink that I'm going to be installing is 30 inches long, and it's about 16 inches wide. And it's going to be installed right here in between this bay. And in order to do so, I'm going to measure the inside of the sink, and I got 30 inches. So I'm going to add a 1/2 inch to that, so I'm going to make it 30.5 inches wide. And width-wise, we got 17 inches, so I'm going to make it 17.5 inches wide for the framing to drop the sink in. In order to frame this out, I'm going to cut 2 2x4s to fit in between these 2x4s, and I got about 24 inches. And then I also need to cut 2 30.5 inch boards to go in between to get my width. All right, I'm going to place the sink right in the center of this opening. I now have the sink framed out, and because I'm using cement board, I need to come over 5 foot off this edge. I'm going to put a full piece because cement board comes in 5'3". Then I'm going to mark 5 foot to where I have a support where the break of the cement board is. I'm going to measure 5 foot to the center of that stud. Before applying the polyurethane, I'm going to go through with a 100 grit sandpaper and just sand off any of this lettering or any imperfections in the wood before we apply the poly. And of course, we got to vacuum really well after we're done sanding. And I'm going to put on my respirator and get this done. To protect the lower shelf and all the wood exposed here, I'm going to coat it in what's called water-based polyurethane. This stuff's great. It has low fumes, so it's unlike the oil-based to where you'd have a lot of strong fumes. You had to open up windows, wear a respirator and all that. And I got a foam brush, 4-inch foam brush, and we're just going to place it on really thin and cover everything with one coat. Wait a little while after it sets up and dries. Then we're going to place another coat on it to add protection to this framing. If you'd like to see how I built this massive mobile workbench with power outlets, check out this video. It'll help you out.